Welcome to the Schuby Show, where sports, movies, TV shows, technology, history, and more come to life. Now, please be seated and get ready for some more never-ending nonsense with yours truly, Schuby.
This is the Schuby Show with yours truly, Carson Schubert, and welcome to the Schuby Show. And today we have Dom Clare for short. He goes by Dom, I believe, and his full name is Dominique Clare. You can follow him on Twitter at Dom Clare. He is a writer for both the Timberwolves and the Vikings on different sites. He has written for places such as the Huffington Post, and he's also written for Hoops Habit and the Viking Age, also a former South Dakota State D1 athlete. So we'll talk to him maybe a little bit about that, and talk to him a little bit about the writing, and also, of course, Vikings and Timberwolves. We'll talk to him about the Timberwolves opening their season last night, a loss to San Antonio, a tough one for the Wolves to start the season, especially since Leonard and Parker were both out for San Antonio. But we'll see if the Wolves can rebound and keep on going. Yeah, rebound. Ha, ha, ha. So that is going to about do it. Again, go to the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow us there. And, of course, go to our website, theschubyshow.com, and look at all of our latest episodes. And we have a section there of some of the most popular episodes. Last week actually was the most downloaded episode overall. Not the most viewed, but the most downloaded on like iTunes and Stitcher and all those places. With Steam Capper, talked about sports betting. So if you didn't get to see that episode or listen to that episode, make sure you do that. It was very informational. He had a lot of good tips and things to do with sports betting, and he makes a profit off that stuff. Pretty much lives off of it at this point. Like you said, he's been doing it for 3 years. And now he's finally at the point the last couple of years where he's been able to live off of what he makes from giving people advice and also making money on his own through betting. So he has a lot of good information. So please go back and listen to that episode from last week. And again, this week it'll be Dom Clare, and he is from actually Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is just down the road from Rock Rapids right here where we do the show. So we will see how Dom's doing. We'll see what he has to say about these two teams and what he's been doing in his career, I guess, as a writer. And he had his own podcast that he started. He's been on different podcasts also. So we'll have him on right after this. And welcome back to the Schuby Show, and we have Dominique Clare joining the show. And Dominique is a sports writer. He's been writing for the Timberwolves and the Vikings for the most part, and you can find his work at the Viking Age and Hoops Habit, and he's also been featured in the Huffington Post. Dom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, ready to talk sports as always.
Awesome.
And so, Dom, give us a little bit of a background of where you grew up and maybe just a little bit of how you got to the point where you are right now.
Yeah, so I was born in the Bahamas. I ended up moving to the Twin Cities when I was young, so that's where the Vikings and Timberwolves fan comes from. And and then I ended up getting a football scholarship to South Dakota State. Played running back, kick returner there for a little while, and so that's what ultimately led me to South Dakota. And now I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota here, and I write for the Vikings, for the Timberwolves. Like you had said a little bit on Huffington Post, and that's that was a little bit of politics, a little bit of technology. Now I'm kind of focusing more on sports. And I've had some of my work featured on Bleacher Report and Fox Sports. And then my main place I write is a Fansided Network, and that's where I cover both Timberwolves and Vikings there.
All right, and so you know both teams pretty well if you're a sports writer for both of them, I would imagine.
Yeah, try to.
So, Dom, tell me a little bit about your playing time at SDSU. Were you a 5-star running back, or how good were you at the college level?
Definitely not 5-star. My career was plagued by injuries.
Okay.
It felt like every time I had things going good, another injury come up. So that's the game of football. And as you can see with the Vikings right now, when you have injuries, next man up, and you just gotta play. And so I was a starting kick returner for a while. Got into the running back rotation. I had one touchdown in my career, kind of when I was actually fully healthy my senior year. And then, I would say the story of my running back career was injuries. I've almost the Sam Bradford unfortunate event type career.
Oh, that's good. At least you had some playing time, and you ended up getting that touchdown. And I'm sure that touchdown, even though it was only one in your career, I'm sure that was still a special moment for you in your career.
Oh, very, very meaningful to come back from when you think at one point when you're done and you're never going to play again, to come back and you see action, but yet get a touchdown. Yeah, it was one of the most meaningful moments of my life.
Well, that could be a very great transition into talking about Teddy Bridgewater, but we are going to talk about the Timberwolves first, because that's what we had on the docket. And as you know, Dom, as you were watching the game, I'm sure last night, the Timberwolves starting their season, playing the San Antonio Spurs, and they've kind of been the enemy of the Wolves. They've been the team that cannot go down against the Timberwolves. I think they've beaten them now 13 or 14 consecutive times now. And the Timberwolves, they played all right, I thought, last night. I think defense may have been the most struggling point for the Timberwolves last night. But it seemed like there might have been a little bit of a rust for that team. Again, the newly assembled core with Jimmy Butler and Jeff Teague and Taj Gibson. And off the bench, you've got Jamal Crawford. So plenty of great new pieces, but it seemed like they may have been off to maybe a little bit of a rusty start, but still played a pretty solid game, I thought.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to show how hard it is in the NBA to just get some stars in the league and put them together and expect it just to hit it off right away. And it just shows like how really well the Warriors accomplished that. Now everyone's trying to copy what they did, but it's not easy to do. It takes time to get guys to mesh together, to figure out who's gonna handle the ball, who's gonna dish the ball, who's gonna score. And I think the Wolves really have a lot of that to figure out. And last night, one positive that I really took away was Andrew Wiggins looked like he may be that guy they're gonna go to when they need a bucket. Obviously, a lot of guys need to play better, but that was one thing I took away last night. He looks like he's taking that step.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I see here, just looking at the statistics, as you said, the Wolves really struggled from the three-point line in the past, especially last season. But they shot 42% as a team from three, which I don't think is too bad. I mean, obviously, if you're a three-point shooter, you maybe want to have a little bit better of a percentage. But as a team, I didn't think that was too bad. The thing that really stuck out to me is they were only 17 out of 23 from free throws, where the Spurs only missed 2, the Timberwolves missed 6. So that was a big, kind of a big part of it. And also the Spurs out-rebounding the Timberwolves 50-42. And turnovers was pretty even. The Wolves had 2 more turnovers than the Spurs. But there's a couple of those stats that maybe tell you, oh, well, that's why they lost or something like that. But as you said, Andrew Wiggins, he looked really, really good last night, at least offensively, and maybe showed a few things defensively. What else did you see from Andrew Wiggins last night?
Yeah, I mean, I watched him exclusively on defense for a while, and he didn't have those complete mishaps that he was having last season. You could tell there's extra effort towards it, which was good to see. It wasn't just all right, we got Butler now, so no one's going to notice as much. You could actually see he was giving more effort on defense, which I think a lot of that too was there's a little pressure off him. Last season, he played the most minutes out of anybody in the NBA, so he got tired at times.
Yeah.
And defense was that area where he took a lot of breaks. So it was really good to see that defensive improvement. And then after that, from Wiggins, offensively, there was some times where, you can see where he just can become unstoppable. And once he really gets that confidence and realizes his ability, he could be that next offensive talent in the league where, when you need a bucket, Wiggins is that guy that nobody on the opposing team could stop. He just has to make his free throws. He shot 67% from three and then 40-something% from free throw, which is a very odd stat. But
yeah, no, that I saw you tweeted that out. That was quite interesting. Yeah, the only player that can shoot for 47% from free throw and shoot 67% from three. Maybe he needs to take a few notes from Karl Anthony Towns. It seems like Towns is possibly even the best free throw shooter on the team. He's pretty good for a big guy shooting the free throws.
Yeah, Towns definitely is good at that. I didn't know what happened to Towns last night, though. He was free throws are maybe one thing, but I think he was trying to do a little too much in general last night, knowing, which is understandable. It's with all the hype coming out, a lot of hype about Towns specifically, and he's trying to show out that he wants to be an all-star, which I thought was going to result in a positive performance, hoping for the first game. But I think he tried to do a little too much and not really rely on his teammates, which he has great teammates now, so he can rely on his teammates more. And ultimately, if he does that, that'll come back to make life a lot easier for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to take time. That's for one thing, for sure. One thing I kind of noticed, I didn't watch the whole game. I probably watched roughly half of it. But one thing I kind of noticed is they were giving a lot of space on defense between like 2 to 3 feet from the offensive player, the shooter, and I thought that really cost them because whenever the Wolves would take a step back or two, the Spurs would fire shots, and most of the time they were going in.
Yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate that the Wolves had to play a team like the Spurs their first game because the Spurs are known for getting the best. Playing what they the announcers always call Spurs basketball, getting that ball movement, the three corner or the corner three, drawing guys in, kicking balls out. They didn't even need Kawhi to keep that going. And so I think for the Wolves, while they're figuring out who's who and what's what on the team, that was a tough opponent to go against. Greg Popovich, and he knew that the guys were new together, and he exploited that a little bit last night. So hopefully they can recover and get back and, really play help side D, get out and contest shots. Cause that's not going to work if they don't get that fixed. That'll be a huge hole, and teams will definitely exploit that, especially good teams like the Spurs and Warriors and Rockets.
Absolutely. Well, going into the season, Dom, I know we didn't really get to talk much about the Timberwolves before today. But what was your expectations? Were you expecting that their offense was going to be the strong point of this team, or were you expecting that the defense with the newly acquired Taj Gibson and Jimmy Butler, the former Defensive Player of the Year, coming to the Timberwolves, did you think that defense was going to be a strength, or were you still pretty sure that this could be a kind of be one of the weak points on the team?
I was expecting the defense to really, really pick up and be a lot stronger. It wasn't horrible by any means last night. It wasn't what I expected, but it was better. But I do think that'll pick up too. And I just think the team mentality is shifting a little more towards Tom Thibodeau's mentality, which is that tough D rebound, but guys that can slash and score. You're going to be athletic and beat you there, but you have that that attitude about you on defense. And I'm hoping that they still have the ability to get to that. But yeah, I think offense is obviously with that firepower they have they got a three-headed monster that's going to be tough to stop. They just have to figure out who they're going to facilitate through.
So looking at the team as a whole going forward, what do you have a realistic expectation of this team? Do you think, to me, the absolute ceiling would be a number 4 seed in the West? And I feel like if this team misses the playoffs somehow, that's got to be considered a very big disappointment considering all the expectations coming into the year. And obviously we've got a huge regular season ahead of us yet. But, I mean, when you bring in the players like Jimmy Butler and Crawford and just Gibson, and also who kind of didn't play that last little bit, Jeff Teague. He didn't really play in the last few minutes. Do you think that was a wise decision by the Timberwolves to not let him play so much? I mean, obviously you're trying to get defensive stops, but maybe take some offense off the court also.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting move to me. I mean, the Wolves paid money to have Teague there. They made a bold move by getting rid of Rubio, who's been a very consistent guard, to bring him in, and to not play him at the end of the game baffled me a little bit, because I mean, if they would have kept Rubio, you would have to have assumed Rubio would have been in at the end of the game. So it's like, if you're going to what they called an upgrade at point guard, why he better be in at the end of the games. If otherwise, it just shows that, I mean, the moves that they made, they're not confident in, and they didn't do it for the right reasons. If you're going to be playing Tyus Jones, who we already had, and it is a lot cheaper contract than what the Wolves had to do for Jeff Teague. And I mean, I didn't know what that was about. I know Tyus Jones had a better plus minus, which, I mean, say what you want about plus minus rating. But I mean, Teague, it's his first game with the team. I mean, let him get those kinks out. He did. I mean, he's aggressive out there. He had that nice block at the rim, which was nice to see from a point guard. And I mean, he had some scrappy defensive plays that he's known for. And I just think you brought him in here, let him ride it out. And if it doesn't work out, then you look at it down the road, but don't mess with a guy's confidence like that so early in the season.
Yeah, I think just looking at that move, that was the one move I was hoping the Wolves weren't going to make. I was kind of on the Ricky Rubio train after last season, especially. It looked like he took a really major leap forward, especially on offense.
Yeah, it was his best season.
Yeah, and I was kind of shaking my head like, why are we getting rid of this guy? Honestly, I think Rubio would be probably the better point guard just to run this offense, just because of so many weapons, and pretty much all he would have to do is pass the ball.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. I was really excited that they were finally getting. I mean, Rubio to me is one of the premier passers. If you look at just pure passing point guards in the NBA, and to put some guys around him that can cut, that are athletic, for him to throw lobs to and just go up and get it with Butler and Wiggins, I thought that was going to be an unstoppable team there. But I mean, then obviously Rubio's biggest knock has been his shooting and his scoring, which was, like you said, greatly improved last year. So I was surprised they gave up on him. I know Thibodeau, it wasn't a big fan of his, which I never really heard all the reasons why. But I mean, the poor guy, they've been shopping him for the last 3 years, so at least he can move on and finally go to a place that I mean, for his sake, I hope he's appreciated. He's a good player, and I mean, I think he's going to do well in Utah.
Yeah, I think so too. And then I think they also added Paul Millsap, and along with still Rudy Gobert. I think that could be an interesting big three, and I think Utah might be a potential playoff contender also there. So that'll be an interesting thing. My idea was, if you're going to get rid of Rubio, you got to make sure it's a for sure upgrade. And the only thing that I thought was a for sure upgrade out there on the market was Kyle Lowry, to be honest with you. And they did not get him, and they're like, oh, well, let's go for Teague. And it did not look the greatest last night. But as you said, of course, it's a long season, and he's still got to get acclimated and all that stuff. But to me, Teague is just not that big of an upgrade over Rubio, except for maybe shooting-wise.
Yep, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you could see that last night. Hopefully, obviously, Timberwolves fans are going to be hopeful that gets better. But yeah, it wasn't a pretty sight for people that liked Rubio to see last night.
Yeah. So, what would you say is your prediction for this team going into the postseason? Do you think they make it to the postseason? What seed do you have them at, and how far do you think they can go?
So before last night, I was going to say like a little bit above 50 wins, about the 4 seed. After last night, it really made me realize that, that it's going to take them some time to mesh. and it's, like, still optimistic about them. But so now I'm like probably around 46, 47 wins, 5 or 6 seed as of now, unless they really show me something different. So I'm probably getting matched up against someone like Houston, first round in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If that, like that 2-3, play against that 2-3 seed area. So yeah, that's how that's changed a little bit. I mean, you never know though. They could really put it together at the end, and that's when you have to be playing the best basketball. And I mean, it's a long season, so I don't want to put too much stock into the disappointment I had last night. But at the same time, I also want to be realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I think the ceiling is the 4 seed, and I thought that the floor, honestly, just because of all the talent they brought in, was the 8 seed. But after last night, it makes you think that maybe this team has got some growing pains to go through here in this first year. Still got youngsters like Wiggins and Towns coming into their own yet. I mean, obviously they're really good already, but still have work to do, and especially now adjusting to 4 new teammates across, for sure 4 new teammates, and I think there's even some lower-end free agents that they may have signed that really aren't going to have too much of an impact, but 4 guys for sure that they've got to get used to.
Yep, yeah, and that will take time. Right now I'm giving it 3 weeks to a month before I really give this team a full judgment, and then I think I'll give more of a fair analysis after they really get a chance to mesh.
Absolutely. So that is going to do it for Timberwolves talk. Let's switch gears over to the Vikings. And the Vikings, obviously, losing Dalvin Cook earlier this season against Detroit, and a lot of people right away could tell that was an ACL tear right away. And the Vikings are not used to running backs or any injuries happening, are they?
that would not be a true statement.
No, not at all. The Vikings are very used to injuries happening, and Teddy Bridgewater, obviously a big story last year when he went down with the non-contact. Of course, non-contact knee injuries also been the big story with the Vikings. Bridgewater, obviously, and Dalvin Cook. And I think Dalvin Cook's was probably at a higher speed than what Teddy's was, but obviously we don't really know because we never saw video of Teddy. But just to see Teddy come back to practice yesterday, that is just amazing to me because of how gruesome that injury sounded and that he was so close to losing his leg potentially. And that it's just amazing to see Teddy Bridgewater back at practice for the Vikings.
Yeah, and you can't ask for a better storyline right now. I mean, the Vikings have a very good team. It was Bridgewater's team when he got hurt, and now, Keenum and Bradford have kind of been holding it down, which they're we'll probably get into that in a little bit later. But I mean, to talk about Teddy to actually have the possibility to come back, Super Bowls in Minneapolis this year, just the possibility of that. Just imagine that storyline if he were to be leading the Vikings after coming back after a surgery that some people said he may never come back and be the same again.
Absolutely. Teddy's leading us to the promised land. It's happening.
He has the opportunity.
He does. So looking at the quarterback situation, since we're talking about Teddy, first of all, what chance do you give him to be back, and when do you think is a realistic target for him to come back?
I mean, they cleared him, and he's been adamant that he feels good. So I think we could see him sooner than later. Obviously, right now Keenum's leading that team, and he's doing a great job. So if you if it could be injury that makes him come sooner, which I don't. Obviously, you never wish that on anyone. You never want that to happen that way. But that is the way. That is the way a lot of people come back and get their opportunity again. Right. But I mean, I also think it may be a decision the coaches make once they realize Bradford may not be coming back and Keenum may be playing okay, getting wins. Vikings good enough record to be in the playoffs and just go, okay, Keenum's got us this far, but we know don't have a chance at the Super Bowl with him. Bridgewater's looking really good in practice. We're just going to make the executive decision and go with Bridgewater. And I think that it may be a situation like that where Keenum did his job. He did everything good. No offense to him, but they're just going to go with the better quarterback getting here to the playoffs.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of people are all on team quote-unquote briefcase now with Case Keenum being really good. And obviously he has been very good, I think, for the Vikings. But there has been times when you see him not look very good out there. He's made some questionable throws at times, and some of them have been very fortunate not to be intercepted. He finally did get intercepted this last week against Green Bay. But you can definitely see that there are some flaws in his game. And one example I would say, I think it was against the Lions. He threw a pass over the middle to, I believe it was either Blake Bell or David Morgan, one of the two, and that pass was just dangerous. He should not have thrown that pass at all. Very lucky It wasn't intercepted. What are your thoughts on how Keenum has played, and then we'll get into Bradford?
I mean, as for being a career NFL backup, Keenum's played phenomenal. I mean, I would rank him as one of the top tier backups, especially based on his performance this year in the NFL. But that's just it. He's a backup. If Bridgewater were to go somewhere else, he's not going there as a backup. He's going there to start. When you sign Case Keenum, he's in that backup conversation. So there's just a different tier between those two. And when you have like a healthy Bridgewater, I mean, it's not even on the same level. So those people that are on Case Keenum, I think they just need to realize that he may be playing well and getting the Vikings wins, but that's just a testament of how good the Vikings team really is. I mean, improved offensive line. You look at that receiving core, you got led by Diggs and Thielen. I mean, those are two top 10 receivers in the league the way they're playing right now. And then Rudolph's an athletic tight end. You see some of those balls he just catches over top of people. I mean, he's a great release valve. I think that needs to be utilized more. And then of course, that defense that usually has the offense in a good position and doesn't have them in the game, or doesn't put them in a bad position because they hold their own. So the offense just has to do their job.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things with Keenum has been he had that really great game against Tampa Bay, but he really hasn't been able to put up that quite big of numbers against some of the other opponents that the Vikings have played. Is that credit more of how bad maybe the Tampa Bay defense was, or do you think Keenum is just not quite as good against some of these better defenses in the NFL?
Definitely a combination of both. I mean, he's when he is going to get against a better defense, they're going to know he's a backup, and they're going to like when they put the blitz on, backups get a little shakier than a quarterback that really has that it factor. Where I mean, you can see when he doesn't realize guys are coming, and it takes him a little longer to pick that up, and then the blitz comes, he just kind of throws it up. And sometimes Diggs and Thielen have bailed him out, and other times it's been, like you said, a scary pass in the middle or scary pass on the side, and it puts the Vikings in a bad position.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, of course, the guy that the Vikings traded for, Sam Bradford, last year, again, coming in just 10 days before, traded 10 days, I think it was, like right before his first start against the Packers on Sunday Night Football. And let's not take away anything that Bradford did last year, because I thought he was very, very good. I don't think he was top 5 quarterback, maybe not even top 10 quarterback in the league, but I did think he was definitely an average or better quarterback in the NFL last season. And, of course, that was with a very bad offensive line and didn't have many opportunities to take deep shots down the field because most of the plays drawn up by Pat Shurmur were 5 to 10 yards or less because they knew they didn't have that time because of the offensive line struggling. So what would you say Bradford has meant to the Vikings? Obviously, we know he's got a chance to maybe come back yet this year, even though a lot of people are speculating he has taken his last snap as a Viking. What would you say to those rumors, and what do you think about Bradford as a whole?
As a whole, I mean, I was excited about the move last year. My heart just breaks for what Bradford's been through. Just seeing, how he's come back from those injuries. I mean, multiple times, and then last season, he hung in there. I mean, he got hit a lot, and he stayed healthy last season, which surprised a lot of people. And then he obviously, like you were saying, he had to throw those shorter passes, but he did a very good job doing that. When you have to completely change your game style up and know the offensive line that you have and still make that work. I mean, he gave the Vikings a shot at the playoffs. It just ultimately ended up not working out. And then this year with an improved O-line, everyone was very excited about him. He came in. I mean, that first game was the best performance of any quarterback this season so far. I mean, Bradford was on fire. He was making throws that only Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady I've seen do before. And those were all on point. And I was just ecstatic about what he was going to do this season. And that just took all the wind out of everybody to see him not come back. And after that, and it started to be a here we go again type deal. And then when he did come back, I mean, that was a bad. I think he was a little nervous about Bridgewater coming back and rushed it. And you could tell he was not the same guy. And that's what gets us to where we are now, with everyone thinking he might have played his last down, because when you just lose that confidence in a knee, that's a hard thing to just get back in a few weeks.
Well, yeah, and considering the fact that he had torn that same ACL twice, I believe, prior to this, and just looking at the injury history of Bradford compared especially to Bridgewater, that was really his first major injury. Bradford has had multiple major injuries, and the fact that it sounds like Eric Sugarman may have said after that Monday night game against Chicago that just came from wear and tear on his knee, and that's kind of concerning, because you get to the point where you might start talking about arthritis on your knee after multiple times getting that knee hit, and of course the tears of the ACL. That could have long-term effects, not only in his NFL career, but even personally in his personal life. That could have effects on his life.
Just walking around.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think is a realistic thing for him in his career? Do you see him coming back to Minnesota next year, or do you think the Vikings move on and maybe he goes to a team like the Jets, who need a quarterback, or the Browns, or somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think he's going to end up regardless of whether he comes back or not. I do think he's going to end up somewhere else next year. Just with the Vikings having Bridgewater, I feel like they have always believed in him long term, and if he's healthy, that'll play a huge role in what they do. Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately what I think that is going to come down to. It's going to come down. Bridgewater's basically going to make the decision on Bradford, and then it'll come down to Bradford's health, obviously, if he's healthy too. But yeah, I mean, I see him going somewhere else unless he makes this miraculous comeback and there's that same Bradford that everyone saw in week one. And then, I mean, that would make it a clear choice to keep him if he can come back and do that. That puts the Vikings in the Super Bowl talk instantly.
Yeah, and that's been the thing with Bradford though too, is he's been unable to continually put up those numbers. He'll have a good game or two every now and then, but then he'll maybe go back to being the average everyday Sam Bradford, and that's kind of the thing that we saw last year a lot of the time. And again, a lot of that had to do with the offensive line and the limitations, but Bradford has never been above 500. I don't know if people realize this in his career, and I know he's been on bad teams, but there's got to be some point when you look at the quarterback situation and say, well, maybe the quarterback is part of the problem, actually. He's never been above 500, and he has never been in the playoffs. He's never had that experience. I don't know if the Vikings could even trust him if they did get to the playoffs, to be honest.
Yeah, and I guess no one will ever know until he gets there. So it'll remain a mystery until he finally gets that opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. So Dom, we'll wrap up here talking quickly about what you expect from the Vikings. Already, in my opinion, exceeding expectations by at least one game. I was expecting them to maybe lose to Green Bay on Sunday. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers going down played a huge role in that not happening. What is a realistic expectation of this team? Playoffs? How far? What would you say?
As of right now, I'm predicting 10-6 with first place in the North, NFC North.
NFC North, and how far do you think the Vikings can go then once they get into the playoffs?
I mean, it's right now. There's no one that really stands out to me as like a team that is just scary. That like, I hope the Vikings don't get matched up with them right away. So I see them having the ability if they get consistent quarterback play and get Bradford or Bridgewater back. I could see them going to like the finals and like the championship round in their division.
Yeah. Dom, again, we appreciate you joining the show. Again, tell the listeners where they can find your work.
Yeah, always find me at Twitter. I put everything out on there at Dom Clare. Otherwise, if you go to Hoops Habit or the Viking Age, publish articles on the regular there. So yeah, check me out. I'll be getting a lot of good content out this week.
All right, so yeah, get ready for the Vikings-Ravens game and get ready for another long NBA season. Hopefully the Timberwolves can rebound. Rebound, I know, I said that already. I love puns, so that's why that happens. But anyways, again, thanks, Dom, for joining us, and we'll have to try and get you on again sometime.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right. That is going to do it for this week on the Schuby Show. We'll be back again next week with another episode. Not sure what's coming next week, but we will have another episode for you next week at some point. With hopefully another guest. If not, it'll be back with just me. Again, thanks to Dom Clare for joining the show. And again, follow him on Twitter at Dom Clare and check out all of his work for the Vikings and Timberwolves on the fan-sided networks, Hoops Habit and the Viking Age. Appreciate him joining, and I appreciate you listening. If you could, please leave a review and a rating on iTunes, and maybe eventually, if we get enough reviews, we'll maybe get into a possible contest of winning something from the show. So please do that. Review us on iTunes. Hopefully you would give us a positive review, but any review at this point would be great. If you have any suggestions about how to improve the show, or if you have any guests that I should bring onto the show, please let me know, and we'll maybe try and get certain guests onto the show. Appreciate you joining the show again, listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Schuby Show. We hope you mildly enjoyed yourself with more never-ending nonsense with yours truly. For more nonsense, go to the website, theschubyshow.com. Get the show on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Until next time, Skol.